Hello, and welcome to Newsday Tuesday, our first episode, where we'll tell you a little bit about all of the great things that Nudge Security has been releasing recently. My name is Julia Casilius, and I'm a Principal Product Marketing Manager at Nudge. And today we'll be walking through 3 new updates that you may have missed from us recently, and that will include our app directory, which will help you streamline SaaS app requests coming in from your employees, our new app health statuses to help show you when there are outages across your SaaS app base. And also we'll get into OAuth alerting, particularly the new functionality we've added to help organizations protect themselves against the new or the recent Google OAuth vulnerability. All of these things that I'll talk about today are available to you right now in the product if you are already a Nudge user. And if you're not, it just takes a few minutes to get a trial up and running. So with that, let's kick off the demo. We're going to start off with something that a lot of customers have been really excited about, which means it's the thing that I'm the most excited to show you. And to give you a little bit of context, those of you who already use Nudge Security already know that we use a patented discovery method to deliver a full history of all of the SaaS applications in your environment. And that's everything your employees have ever created accounts for, going back as far as your email history exists. And that also includes real-time alerts as those new applications are alerted. And it all starts with just a single integration point via Microsoft Workspace or Google Workspace or Microsoft 365. So, within minutes of signing up, you are able to see a directory or an inventory of everything that you have in your environment. The change I'm excited to show you today is that now, clicking this app directory button, you can share a directory of approved applications with your employees and give them an easier way to request access to accounts that they would like to use. So let's talk about how to get up and running. I'm going to take us into settings here. And I'm going to show you that it's really fast and easy to deploy this inventory and roll it out to your workforce. Like I said, when you first install Nudge, it's very quick to get an inventory of what's out there. And then to set this up for your organization is super simple. By flipping this switch, I can turn it off and then turn it back on again. Anything that I've selected here, I can share things that are in review or just things that are approved or acceptable. Let's just go with everything that's approved for right now. And we will take a look. You can see that it's narrowed down to just what's approved. It's easy as that. And the beauty of this really is that in cases where these applications aren't managed centrally, you can completely cut out IT as the middle person for passing requests along. So let's just say, for example, someone wants to get access to Intercom or GitLab. Let's say GitLab is managed by someone in your engineering team and someone from IT doesn't have access. Anytime a new user needs an account, maybe they make the request to IT and then that gets passed along to the engineering person. Or there are even more complicated cases that I've heard from customers. So the goal here is to simplify that. And to show you what this looks like for your employees, I'm going to switch over to what employees see. So when an employee logs in to Nudge, when they have the personal view enabled, they will start out with an overview of their applications. So you can see this person has 4 developer tools, a couple of AI tools, right? They can click into that and see it. Or to request access to new things, see what else is available, they can click on App Directory over here. And now they can see that full list of everything that is available to them. And then when they want access to something, all they have to do is drill in and click Request Access to this app at the top there. That will send a nudge through email or Slack, depending on your organization's settings, to the technical contact who is enabled for this application. So this is what your app owner or technical contact will see. They'll see a message saying a user's requested access, and then they have the option to either, to make a selection saying that they have handled it. So let's talk about how to populate your app directory. We've talked about how to enable it, and everything that I've shown you. If you already are a Nudge user and you have been maintaining approval statuses, easy peasy, it'll all just appear. If you want to modify that, what you do, we're going to flip back over to the All Apps tab. It's really easy to reorganize, make sure that the information is up to date. So let's filter, because let's just imagine that everything in DevOps, all of the apps here, let's mark them all as approved, except for, let's say Docker is not approved, and now we click Edit Apps. So here, whatever method I use to select apps, I could in bulk edit the technical contact to make sure things were going to the right person. But what's important here is that we are going to go to approval status. We're going to mark all of these as approved. Yep, I'm sure. And all of these now, and that column is not showing up here, so we'll see all columns. You can see that these are all now marked as approved. So you can also, using filters, let's look at all applications. Let's look at all applications that have no approval status, or they're in review. I guess we can only do one at a time for this particular field. So things that are not set, let's say I want to make sure folks know Calendly is approved, Atlassian is approved. Okay, I can edit these and add them to the list. So easy as that. We can go into in review, same situation. And in some cases, you might come across applications that need a little bit more investigation. You can do a security review based on the information we already have in here. So really excited about this functionality. We've had great feedback from employees already, and I'm excited for hearing more feedback from you as you get started and get using it. So the next thing I'd like to talk to you about is going back to our dashboard, app health statuses. This is a module that we've added to our dashboard right below app breach notifications called app health. This shows you the statuses of the applications in your environment that are experiencing issues. And just for a little bit of context here, I've heard from various customers that as complaints start to trickle in from employees about app health, about app issues, right? You can waste a lot of time fielding questions or troubleshooting before you realize that something was actually just wrong on the app side. And this can really help you cut to the chase, put this at the front of your process. You don't have to Google around for the status page. You can link directly to it here. So, for example, under major outages here, I can click go to app statuses. This takes me directly to the app's status page, right? So again, no searching. It's one place I know there's an incident and I know I can dig into what it was and who it might affect. Similarly, I can click on the app itself and see who is using it, for one thing. If this is an account, there's only one person using this, maybe it's not something I'm going to send a notification out about, but I can see major system outage listed here. If you don't see in the app health dashboard right away whether something, sorry, I'm going to go back to the dashboard, is showing up here because it's a long list under operational, you can find that from the app overviews under apps, and then by clicking on the particular app. So we use Nudge Security or operational, etc. So the next thing I'd like to get into is another thing that's pretty exciting. not such great news, but we did react quickly. There was a Google OAuth vulnerability announced in December, and it's kind of an interesting one. So first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about, about what happened. In December, Google announced a new OAuth vulnerability that can allow um, ex-employees to still gain access to SaaS accounts that they may have had. Um, and they do this by accessing what we've been calling shadow Google accounts. And I'm going to show you quickly how to create one, right? So what a shadow Google account is when someone goes to create a Google account within your domain. So here we have Danessa Rishi creating an account. All the employee has to do to create what we call a shadow Google account is by adding a plus sign and then text when they sign up for a Google account. And so, here the user added admin, that will forward all email to the existing email address. If the email address was danielle@nudgesecurity.dev, it would become Danielle plus admin at nudgesecurity.dev. And behind the scenes, so the verification goes to that work email. And then once you enter that, you essentially have a new account created. What is important to know about this, and the reason that this is dangerous, is that those shadow accounts can be used to sign up for other SaaS accounts, which can be useful for things like keeping track of spam or anything like that. But it won't show up in your Google admin console. And what that means is when the employee departs and you suspend their corporate Google user, the shadow account may still have access to any of those SaaS accounts that they have created. So when we learned about this, we created a default notification rule to alert you when this happens. And I will show you how to find that. We have, pardon me, notify me when there is a new Google account created with an alias in your domain. This is a new out-of-the-box rule. And by default, this rule will alert you anytime a Google account is created with an alias in your domain, which is a shadow Google account. You can also find what what aliases have already been used to create shadow Google accounts. Here we're drilling into the app overview for Google Workspace. And the way that you can see a full list here is by drilling into resources. So it's used as a short list, so not so difficult to see. But if you have a longer list, you can filter like this. You want to click on account alias to filter by type. And then you can see here's an example of a shadow Google account that was created within this particular workspace. And then you can action on that. While we're on the topic of OAuth risks, I also wanted to touch on something else that wasn't originally planned because it's not new functionality, but it is very timely. I've had questions from customers recently, and we published a blog about it recently, about threats reported by Microsoft in December, and then about an attack that Microsoft disclosed in mid-January. Essentially, in both cases, both the examples that the Microsoft threat intelligence team encountered out in the wild and in Microsoft's own case, where they were compromised by a threat actor called Midnight Blizzard. Threat actors are abusing OAuth after taking over accounts with permissions to create and modify OAuth grants. So in the case of Microsoft's compromise, the threat actor compromised essentially a legacy test account and used that to both create and modify OAuth applications. And we can talk a little bit about what some of that abuse looked like, but ultimately, there are two things that can help protect you from, at a high level, there are two pieces that can help protect you from those kinds of attacks. One is really simple, and we can actually look at this particular workspace is set up through Google Workspace, so I don't have great Microsoft examples, but let's just take a look at GitHub for a second. Something that you might consider a critical app. Nudge can help you ensure that MFA is enabled for this kind of account, and that's one way you can protect yourself. The accounts that were targeted, or the account that was initially compromised at Microsoft, and the situations that they described in their threat intelligence blog about things that had happened at other organizations typically started with an account that was not protected by multi-factor authentication. Here we can see that none of these GitHub users are protected by MFA. So we can take action in Nudge and let them know. We can say required for whatever your particular requirement is, whatever kind of note, hey, do this. And you can send a note saying, please enable two-factor authentication, and you will see their responses start to trickle in here. This is, of course, a technical or a dev environment, so lots of unseen nudges here, but in your case, you would be able to see their results. And so that's something that I think can be really valuable for protecting your most critical accounts. And then in terms of what those threat actors were actually doing, there are a few different ways you can protect yourself with Nudge. And I'll just go over this briefly, just since this is a little bit of an add-on. But Nudge essentially surfaces high-risk OAuth grants. And if we go into grants here, we can actually filter by risk and take a closer look at these. Let's drill in to this particular grant. We can investigate if a new grant comes in, see, what type of access does this have? If it looks suspicious, maybe it says GitHub, but actually, it says Bardeen, but there's some other reason you're suspicious of that, you can act specifically for Google Workspace and Microsoft OAuth grants. You can actually either within the app overview, or the OAuth overview, or in bulk like this, you can revoke them. And so I'm not going to revoke these, but if I did, I would just click this button and they would go away. Or you can audit these applications and just see, are people actually still using them, and clean up the extra by sending a nudge, hey, are you still using this? If they say no, Nudge will revoke it automatically. So those are just a few easy ways you can help reduce your organization's risk of similar types of attacks. Last way, I do just want to show you, we have the option to set up notification rules. So for OAuth specifically, let's say you want to look at specific OAuth scopes, the ability to read or write email is a common one that was abused by the threat actors, that Microsoft had described or experienced. Other kind of read-write access can be quite high risk. Maybe that's something you want to keep an eye on. The types of abuses that the threat intelligence piece had described were data exfiltration, using OAuth access, escalating OAuth access to be able to deploy VMs for crypto mining. Another example was setting up a spam server, essentially, or setting up a spam campaign using the organization's resources, using read-write access to email. So those are some reasons you would want to be careful of those particular scopes. But a nice shortcut is you can be alerted when the risk level is high, right? To anytime there's an OAuth grant that is in that situation, whether it's an existing app that has had escalated permissions or like new scopes granted, or an altogether new OAuth grant. So you could nudge users in that case, in that particular situation, maybe not as appropriate. Here, you might want to email someone at your organization, or maybe have notifications go to a Slack channel. A common one here might be a particular security alias or something like that. Um, so, um, with that, that is everything that I had hoped to show you today about both what is new and what exists that is relevant to new attacks. And so let's turn over to taking a look at audience questions. Thanks so much. Oops, looks like my video got turned off there. Thank you so much again. And I'm just looking at the questions that have come through. One really good one, if an app our customer uses is experiencing downtime, can Nudge show me what else it's connected to? That's a great question. Yes, we can. During the demo, you may have seen when we looked at the app overview, you can click on the security tab for any app and look at the supply chain of that application. And let's see, do I have to have a technical contact specified for every app for the app directory? Is there a default? So the way that Nudge Security handles technical contacts, by default, when a new application is added to your environment, so someone has signed up for something new, the first technical contact is set as, or the first user is set as the technical contact, because that user typically has admin access and can typically is usually the one who starts inviting other people, right? You can change that from any app in the overview. You can change it in the bulk settings that we looked at earlier. So you could filter by technical contact, for example, or by category, and bulk change those. And then we have a nudge that will automatically um, ask the person who's currently set as the technical contact to verify whether it's them or someone else. And so that's a great way to update those and without hunting down everything by yourself. That comes up a lot at Teams. I know it can be a lot of work to hunt those people down when you have a lot of SaaS for all your organizations. So we've tried to make that as easy as possible. And let's see what other questions have come through. If I give employees access to view the app directory, will they see what apps are being used by others? That's a great question. And the answer is no, they won't be able to see who is using other applications. They will see an inventory of their own apps that they've signed up for. And then within the directory, they'll be able to see only the apps that you have specified are permitted, that you have added to the directory based on the category you have set. So if you only have acceptable or approved applications showing, they'll only see that those apps are in your environment, and they'll see who the technical contact is so that they can nudge them and request access. Hopefully that is clear. How do I share the app directory with my workforce? Great question. That one is essentially you go into organization settings and you invite users that way, and you can ensure that the default role is personal view. That will give them the view that we looked at and previewed earlier in this call. And I haven't had any feedback of that being wonky. So it seems to be fairly straightforward for all of the companies that have already turned this on. And like I said, good feedback from employees so far, which is great. How do I get access to these features, these new features? Everything we've talked about is already in the product. this is all functionality that's come out recently, or in the case of the OAuth functionality we talked about at the end, that was already in there. And so there are no upgrades or add-ons, nothing needs to be enabled. If you are not currently a Nudge Security user, all you have to do is spin up a free trial. It just takes a couple minutes to get started. And you can start executing these or start playing with these features today. So let's see. I did have one other question, just clarification question about the Midnight Blizzard situation. That's the Microsoft attack that I mentioned. It is a really interesting case, and I think I think my colleague had shared the link to our blog breaking it down in the chat. What I found the most interesting about that attack is the way that it mirrored some of the same techniques that Microsoft had just written about the month before. And interestingly, HP Enterprise was also hit by Midnight Blizzard and disclosed that compromise around the same time as Microsoft. So we don't know much about the methods they used because they haven't published as much about it, other than that they've shared it was also a compromised account that provided the initial access. The Midnight Blizzard instance, much like the other attacks the Microsoft intelligence team has observed at other organizations, like I mentioned, started with a compromised account, specifically one with the privilege with privileges allowing them to create or modify applications or OAuth applications. And they were able to escalate access using those OAuth grants. They were able to exfiltrate information. They were able to, specifically what the actors accessed at Microsoft was email content related to Midnight Blizzard, which is kind of an interesting one. And some of the other attacks that Microsoft Threat Intelligence talked about, they also were taking some of the other actions that I had mentioned related to OAuth abuse, like spinning up VMs and sending out spam, etc. So definitely check out the blog. It's an interesting case, and like I said, we can help. In the case of activity like what Microsoft was experiencing with Midnight Blizzard, if an attacker were trying something like that at your organization, you would be able to detect high-risk scopes when either the new grants were created or existing apps had their privileges escalated. That would result in a higher risk score. So you would be able to see it very quickly or be alerted on it depending on your rules. And you'd be able to revoke any Microsoft OAuth grants. Any Microsoft or Google OAuth grants you can revoke automatically from within Nudge. And I think that is all of the questions we have time for right now. So if any other questions come through, we will follow up via email. Thank you so much for your time and have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.